matter what you hear on the mainstream media, keep this one thing in mind. Joe Biden has not won the election. Big Tech will probably put a label on this report claiming this information is disputed and then censor the story. It doesn't matter. The harder they try and cover up the facts, the more their desperation shows, which just proves one thing. They're scared. The sham they've been perpetrating since November 3rd is going to come crashing down. If this were any other election at any other time in America's history, officials on both sides of the aisle would be outraged over the staggering evidence of voting fraud. But this isn't any other time, and this isn't an election between President Trump and Joe Biden. This is an election between President Trump and the globalists who want to carve up America and sell it to the highest bidder. There are vast amounts of evidence that foreign entities have meddled in this election, not the least of which is China, a nation with an obvious interest in getting rid of President Trump and putting in someone who's easy to control. Maybe someone whose family has already accepted over $1 billion from the communist Chinese government. Someone like Joe Biden. So let's take a second and break down the election and see exactly where things stand. While many states have already been called for the predictable winners, there are 6 key battleground states where the levels of fraud are off the charts. Let's start with Nevada, because that was one the Democrats thought they'd win handily. The official story is that Biden won the state by 33,000 votes. That's a good margin. Should be a clear win, except it's not. It turns out about 1,500 people who voted in Nevada's elections are dead. Another 2,500 changed their addresses to another state or even another country. Some 6,000 voters were flagged by the post office as having vacant addresses. 8,000 voters cast ballots from addresses that don't even exist. 15,000 people somehow voted from vacant or commercial properties. 20,000 voters somehow cast their ballots from out-of-state addresses. And the big one, a whopping 42,000 voters successfully voted twice in the election. Now, even without knowing who all these people voted for, Republicans and Democrats should want to get this cleared up and ensure our election integrity is being maintained, not just when your guy is winning. So they say Joe Biden is up in Nevada by 33,000 votes. Well, right there, that is 95,000 fraudulent votes, which should automatically put the state back in the running for President Trump. But Nevada isn't alone. It's a similar situation in Pennsylvania, where Biden won by 81,000 votes. But the thousands of dead and out-of-state voters in Pennsylvania add up fast, and in the end come out to some 121,000 fraudulent ballots cast in the election. It's the same story in Wisconsin, where Joe Biden apparently won by 20,000 votes. But in reality, some 200,000 fraudulent ballots were cast in Wisconsin, again, totally erasing Biden's lead. In Arizona, the AP called the election for Biden, claiming he was up by 10,000 votes. But Arizona is even worse than Wisconsin, with over 300,000 fraudulent or questionable ballots cast in the state. In Michigan, Biden is reportedly up by 154,000 ballots. But that's only until you count the more than 500,000 fraudulent ballots that have trickled in since Election Day. And then, of course, there's Georgia, where Biden somehow managed to swing the bright red peach state to blue, coming in ahead with 12,000 votes. Except that now we have mountains of evidence of voting fraud, including Republican poll watchers being forced to leave under false pretenses so that poll workers could count secret stashes of ballots unobserved for hours. It's worth mentioning, during that time, the number of votes for Biden skyrocketed while those for Trump simultaneously plummeted. That leaves Georgia with more than 200,000 fraudulent votes, meaning Biden is clearly not the winner. This is the situation we're dealing with. The evidence for fraud is greater than it ever has been, and yet the mainstream media and Democrats are completely ignoring it. Or worse, they're actually complicit. in covering up the greatest election fraud in American history, all with the goal of undermining democracy and overthrowing the duly elected president of the United States. Until we have answers for these very real and very serious questions, our voting integrity is not secure, our democracy is not safe, and this election is not over.